Hello everyone. Colors are extremely difficult to work with, but it's also extremely fun. I've decided to start trying some new things. You know, how hard could oil painting be? I have a few oil paints that my mom got me years and years ago. I also have a palette that she got me years and years ago. This was when I was like 14 or something. They're really old. I haven't opened the oil paints yet. I'm assuming that they're fine. I used the oil paints one time, but I never even got close to finishing the painting. I think I got the top left corner of it and that's it. And so the paint on the palette that I was using was still there after 10 years. So yesterday I got out a chisel and chiseled off the extra paint so that I can use it in the future. I didn't know exactly what tools to use, so in researching some stuff, I realized that I need like little tiny metal cups for the turpentine or the paint thinner and linseed oil. I got some linseed oil about a month ago for this purpose, but it's taken me this long to actually get to this because I was scared. And now I'm not. So I don't really live near an extremely extensive art store. So I had to order some, what are they called? The little cup things that you clip to a palette so that you can use the paint thinner and linseed oil and all that stuff. Or whatever you use with them. I'm just gonna use these things for that. I had to order them online and it took a couple days to get here. So in the meantime, I still wanted to practice with color. And so since my brother lent me his drawing tablet, I was like, why not try digital painting, which is definitely not exactly like actually oil painting, but I have a newfound respect for digital artists. There are a few things that are intuitive, but there's a teeny tiny little learning curve with effects. What are they called? Brushes? I'll just call them brushes. Brushes on like Photoshop and stuff. I know that there are some softwares that digital artists use specifically that's not Photoshop, but I have Photoshop. Why not use it? At least just for practice. Because oil paints are so expensive. I don't just want to like dive into oil painting without, because I don't have unlimited resources. I have to be conservative with my usage of oil paints. But I was excited to do it, and I'm still very excited. In fact, I'm more excited than I was when I started. Here's the thing. The only thing that I know is what I see. Okay, there's so much to this. I want to do this as like multiple parts because this is going to be a long, long, long journey to actually get to where I want to be with oil paints. But I don't remember where I was going with that. Oh yeah. I was saying the only thing that I know is what I see because I haven't taken any art classes besides junior high. So like 13, 14, I had one art teacher, but we never even got to painting. I don't know anything. I know a couple things, but those couple things really are nothing in comparison relative to the rest of the knowledge that there is to be in color theory. I was afraid of doing it at first because I didn't know anything. I was like, I'm just gonna stick with black and white, just charcoal, and that's going to be like my area. And it still is because I'm so used to it, or I'm more familiar with it than anything to do with color. But I've always liked color, and I've always been really fascinated by certain artists that I like, the way that they work with color, and some colors that they use and they put it somewhere and you don't think that it's going to work in that spot, but then it somehow does. It doesn't make any sense, but then it does at the same time. It's always fascinated me. And I've always wanted to do it, but I had to really hone in to learn about charcoal, and oil painting is not even in the same world. That's why I say like the only thing that I know is what I see. Because I don't know anything technically or like what they teach in art school, I've had to go off of like just what I see. And so the main thing that I have in my mind when drawing or doing anything from any sort of reference is to forget what I'm drawing and just to do what I see. So like if I see like a face, it's supposed to be skin color, but it's not skin color actually, like with this picture that I was painting digitally. Grace from Resident Evil 9. I want to get into more of why I decided to paint her. I just really like her character. Keep in mind, I haven't played Resident Evil 9. I've just watched people play it, but I really like the story. Grace Ashcroft, I really like her character a lot, and I want to get into more of that later, not in this video. Maybe when I perhaps in the future paint her with actual oil paints. This is just part one, an intro to this journey on which I am embarking. Anyway, so with Grace's face, the reference that I used, or the first reference that I used with this practice run, it's her face, and so you think, oh, skin color, but it's all just blue, different shades of blue and gray and stuff, and maybe a little bit of like purple. So it was really interesting because I already knew going into it that I can't think I'm gonna paint a nose or a mouth. But in addition to not thinking about the specific feature that I'm drawing or the subject that I'm drawing and what it's supposed to look like, I was thinking about colors. And so the same applies to colors, even though I think it's a little more complicated than that. But on the surface, the same applies to colors. So I have to like squint really hard and isolate the color as much as I can and try to just get the color that I see and not look at it and be like, okay, so I know that this is her neck, so I need to get more of a peach tone. No. Her neck was like all dark blue and green and like teal and stuff. I knew that going into it, and so I think that helped a lot. But that's all I have to go on. I don't have any additional knowledge with like color theory or anything, which is kind of nice. If I'm being honest, it's kind of nice, at least for a little bit, because then I don't have anything to infer onto the picture that I'm trying to paint. All I have to go on is just what I see, and so that's what I do, and I don't have anything getting in the way. Like if I was painting an apple or something and I was like, all right, I'm painting an apple. I know what an apple looks like. I know that it's red or green or something. Then I get the wrong color and I stop paying attention to the reference because I'm just using my own intuition, or not intuition, what I think should be there, rather than what is actually there. So I have fewer things to ignore in my brain because I don't know anything about anything. That being said, after doing this, I realized that I could use a little bit of color theory knowledge, but that's okay. Even if it takes me longer to learn how to work with color, I can still learn to work with color, even if it's not like in a conventional way. So that's the big intro. Let me get into the actual painting. My brother has a drawing tablet. He animates a lot, so he lent me his drawing tablet for a couple videos because I was sick and I didn't want to record my face, and so I wanted to do some new stick figures that wasn't with just my mouse, because the stick figure before was just with my mouse and it was a pain to get all the layers and stuff and to make new drawings. But with the tablet it was a lot easier, and then I could make little illustrations and it was really fun, and I want to do more of that. But in addition to that, because I had to wait for the little cups before I use any of my oil paints, I had to wait a couple days, but I didn't want to just do nothing because my mind was on painting. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to use the drawing tablet and just see if I can replicate what I think the painting experience, the traditional painting experience would be like. That's when I opened Photoshop. I was gonna do Grace anyway, and with oil paints, because it's so expensive and permanent, I don't want to just haphazardly go in without knowing anything about what I'm doing. I still won't when I go into oil painting, but at least I'll have a little bit of an idea of what to do. That being said, I imagine digital painting and oil painting, or traditional painting, is not really the same at all. I didn't do a lot of layers. In fact, I only did one layer the first day, and then the next day I went with the second layer because I used like a wet paintbrush effect on Photoshop, and that kind of like mixes all the colors sometimes. I wanted to have that. I didn't want a crutch. Eventually I started to use some crutches, but we'll get to that. So I have Grace's picture off to the side. The second day that I painted, I didn't have her recorded in OBS because I'm still trying to figure out how OBS works, and Photoshop is really hard to do that with. So the first day I got it. The second day I didn't for some reason. I don't know why. I wanted to make a point to not use the color picker on the reference itself unless I really needed to. I started off with just trying to find the color by myself. For the most part, it worked okay. I thought it was going to be atrocious, honestly. But it turned out okay. It was a little bit tricky. I didn't really consider the fact that the color wheel or spectrum, whatever it's called, is so extensive. There are only so many colors on the bar on the right where you scroll up and down. What's it called? I don't know. And then within the color shades itself, I didn't realize that on the left is where it's more dull, or where there are more complementary colors. So I figured out how to get certain colors just by using the color picker on certain areas, but I didn't want to put whatever I got from the color picker onto the painting. I saw where it landed on the color spectrum thing when I used the color picker, and then I would kind of, scramble it and then try to get it myself. Honestly, it started out pretty great, or it was pretty relaxing. I stayed in the blue, majority of the first part, probably the first whole day, until I started getting to the mouth, and then I used the color picker on the mouth and discovered where it tells me the colors are. It was in dark blue, and then to the left where there's some purple, and I was like, oh yeah, there is some purple in there. So that kind of woke me up to the fact that the right side, the left side of her face, her left, is warmer than on her right side because there's like, you know, some blue light coming from behind her, and that puts a blue tint on the right side of her face, or her right side of her face. But it was like the left side where the focus is, that's more warm and pink and lively. That was interesting. And it has like more purple in it as opposed to teal, which is where I got the majority of the colors for the first day. At a certain point, I started getting really focused on the details, like really early on, which I probably shouldn't have done because it made it look a little bit flat by the end of the first day. Instead of just like getting like a broad stroke of what everything looks like or where the colors should be, and then very slowly shrinking down to the details, I got really focused on the nose, and it made things look a little flat for a while, and it took me a really long time to get to the eyes. I think the eyes were the last thing that I did. For the most part, it was okay. One thing I didn't realize was how difficult it would be to adjust. So like with charcoal, if you get one feature off, you can just take the eraser or something and just very minorly adjust it, and it's pretty simple. It's easier to get the likeness of a person's face with monochrome stuff with like a pencil and eraser or like charcoal or something. But to get the likeness with paint, I didn't really consider how difficult the likeness would be to get, because in order to adjust features, I have to get the right color, especially because I didn't start with a sketch. A lot of people start with sketches, and I was going to, but I was like, I'm just gonna splotch it on there and see where it sticks. You know, throwing spaghetti at the wall and see where it sticks or how it sticks. I just did like shapes and tried to put it where it looked like it would fit, and just kind of make it look chaotic, and then I would hone in as I like gradually hone in, and as I went. The shadows on her right side, that was probably the hardest part because I would go too dark, and then I would go too light, and then I would go completely wrong tone. So by the end of the first day, I was a little pooped. I have like this thing where I get really focused on the details really early on, not because I think I'm supposed to, but because there's this part of me that really wants it to look perfect right from the get. And if it doesn't look perfect right from the get, or if it doesn't look exactly like her from the beginning, someone would look at it and be like, oh, because it's not finished. It's something that I need to get over, and I kind of got over it a little bit, but that's something that even though no one was watching me, I still had this weird thing where I was like, at every step, it needs to look like her. And so that's why I got so focused on the details. But I should have just taken a step back until I got everything where I wanted it to be, and then I could adjust everything kind of like a sculpture. So by the end of the day, it looked fine, but it still looked a little flat. I thought I was going to be done with it at this point, but I decided to go back in the next day and add another layer so that I could start over on a few places. So I went back to the bigger shapes instead of focusing on the little details. The end of the second iteration, I think, in my opinion, was an improvement. This time you can't see the reference, but I'll just put it at the corner. I went in and I started with a bigger size brush, and I wanted to be more general again, adjust that way, like get the right colors where I want them to be. So with the nose, I basically completely erased it. I think I did pretty okay with not using crutches, but there were a few times that I did use a crutch because I did not know what in the world I was doing. The neck I had to completely redo because it was more blue than I had anticipated. And I think by the end, I didn't make it look exactly like her, but that wasn't really the point anyway. I just wanted to see if I could make it look like a person. I would have liked to get the likeness, but thinking realistically, I've never done this before, so I can't really expect too much. Oh yeah, and then the shadowed side of her face was a lot more blue than I initially thought the first day. So the next day I went in and I did use a color picker, and I was like, oh, that is a lot more blue than I thought it was. So I kept that in mind. Her mouth is really hard to get, but the thing about adjusting to get a person's likeness, in my opinion, the thing that determines whether or not something looks like a person is the mouth. So like if you get the mouth wrong, it will not look like the person. But if you get the mouth correct, it will look exactly like the person, even if the nose is slightly off. Like in my Markiplier drawing, his nose is slightly smaller in my drawing than it is in real life, but it's not really noticeable because, I don't know, even the mouth isn't exactly right. But to me, I focus more on the mouth when trying to make a picture look like someone than anything else. I mean, I obviously try to focus on all the features, but the mouth is like, if I get the mouth wrong, then it's game over. But, with this one, the adjustment with the mouth was really hard because getting the right colors with which to adjust the features. That took some time, and it's really tedious, and so, you know, sometimes I got impatient, and that's why I just kind of left the mouth the way it was. At the end of that one, I focused a lot on her eyes. Her left eye is a lot darker than the right eye because of that tint, like that blue tint, light pollution or whatever it is. That was fun. That was interesting. I was like, hey, I can't make her right eye too dark because it is not that way. It's like half the darkness of the left eye. I don't know. But in the end, after the second day, forgetting that it's Grace or like a specific person that I'm trying to make it look like, overall, I think it's a better picture. It's not like finished technically, but I think it's a better, I wouldn't say better because it's all subjective. I like what it was after the second day a lot more because there is less detail in it, if that makes sense. But anyway, yeah. So that was the first one. Today, I went back and I tried to do another picture. I'm not done with this yet. I will finish it, but for this video, it probably won't be done. In fact, it will definitely not be done. I'm just doing a bunch of pictures of Grace, practicing for oil painting, because ultimately I just want to do an oil painting of Grace, you know, on a small canvas. But I want to get a little bit of a grasp on color before I use very expensive oil paints. This one didn't turn out as well, but that's okay, because I'm gonna start over. This is the first iteration of this shot, and I'm gonna do it again. This one was a little tough because the first one, it was all blue, but this one is like red and green. I couldn't really get an overall shape of it as easily as I could with the first one. So it looks a little bit scary, like horror painting for a while. In fact, it still looks like that, and I think I know what to do next time. I don't think I really started very well. I focused too long on the background and making the background look exactly like it was in the reference, and not enough on like just the general shape and picture of it. When I do it again, which will be right after this recording, I'll focus more on that, like the bigger shapes and stuff, and I'll stop worrying so much about the details to begin with. For the majority of the recording, it looks like a monster, but I still think it looks okay. I think I'm just gonna start over. I think I know what to do. If I want to get like a person's likeness or something, I think I need to focus more on like, you know, getting the general, not drawing their features out exactly, but like getting the placement at least. That will hopefully make sense at a future date. But, you know, I mean, it still looks like a person. It just looks like a horror movie. So I have a newfound respect for digital artists. Holy crap. This was quite difficult. It's really fun to see the relations, because another thing is like when certain colors are next to each other, it does not look how it does isolated. And so that's something that I'm gonna have to battle once I actually start working with real paint. It's gonna take a minute, but you know, I'm pretty happy with the result first time painting, especially like painting digitally for one, but also just painting it all. But yeah, anyway, that is my first attempt at painting and not just drawing. So there you go.